Good morning, friends. I'm doing another misidentification video today on Enneagram 3 versus Enneagram 8. I feel like every once in a while I need to start a video by just interjecting again for everyone watching the purpose for the Enneagram and what it's not for. Despite all the memes out there on the internet, the Enneagram is not for telling what someone is like through the way that they grocery shop or the way that they drive a car or the way that they brush their teeth. Memes are so funny, and I honestly, as somebody who gets the Enneagram to a deep extent, find them funny, but we need to just take a step back and know that that's not what the Enneagram's for. The Enneagram is a tool for helping us kind of get outside this box, as I'm sure you've heard it put, that we're in, and understand our sin patterns so that we can grow to the point of being a fruitful people, to being people who understand our sin patterns and who cannot be tripped up by them. The Enneagram is also not an end-all be-all potion for everything. It is a tool that's a really, really great tool that we can use well in our lives, but it is not the answer to everything. This is a disclaimer that I will not make every video, but it's one that I feel like is important to recenter our eyes on at times. So today when we look at Enneagram 3 versus Enneagram 8, we're looking at a misidentification that actually happens pretty often. These types both can be extroverted, can be dynamic people, can be power players in a business or in a room, but there are so many differences between 3 and 8 that are more under the surface that I think sometimes people overlook. Just to start with the basics, Enneagram 3 is a heart type. Enneagram 8 is a gut type. I think a lot of 3s, because as the text says, and when I say that, I'm talking about the wisdom of the Enneagram, which I see as like one of the core resources on the Enneagram. If you haven't read it, check it out. But the text says that 3s sacrifice their heart's desire at a young age in order to live up to the culture's expectations. So when we look at Enneagram 3s, they're not necessarily like super in touch with their heart. They're not super self-aware people because their energy, which they have great amounts of, is focused very outwardly. It's focused on the world and how they can achieve in it, how they can gain value in their minds, how they can be valuable, how they can win so that people will love them. But when I say that 3 is a heart type, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are super aware of their heart or that they're super gushy feely people. Those are more our 2s and 4s, but 3s at the core are heart types. So when we look at the difference between 3 and 8, there is that dichotomy. 8, on the other hand, is a gut type. Gut tends to correlate a lot with action and movement and grounding in the body. And unlike a head type and unlike a heart type, though 8s are very intelligent people, they tend to not get caught up in minutia and in rumination as our head types would, or in like the panic of the heart or the feels as our heart types would. In the instinctual center, which is 8, 9, and 1, those types tend to just move on instinct and move by their gut. So that's a huge difference between 3 and 8. 8s have a very good intuitive sense, and 3s are sort of lacking it. They have it in certain areas, though. So this is what trips people up. 3s, their one area that is of great intuition is knowing what people want. And usually that's knowing what people want from them. One of 3's greatest gifts is being able to like wear any hat they need to as is often said, wear a mask if they need to in order to fit in. There's this chameleon tendency among 3s where they're like, oh, is it a basketball team? I can play basketball. Oh, is it like fancy lettering with watercolor? I can do that. Or, oh, is it like a corporate board meeting? I can show up and be there and put that hat on. So that's 3's one area of intuition that they're really gifted in. But when it comes to moving on action and shooting from the hip, if you will, that is more in our 8 center. So that's one of our big differences. The differences continue though when it comes to outward expression. If you watch my videos a lot, you know that I talk about physiological manifestation, as I like to put it. But what that means is like the way that exudes through a person in the real world and through their physical expression, through their aesthetic expression. And 3s and 8s are very divided in this. 3s are much more aware of aesthetics. They tend to dress themselves. They tend to, obviously we all dress ourselves. What I mean is they tend to present themselves with something in mind. They tend to put things together in a very intelligent way, because 3s are looking to have an impact through their appearance. They're image type people, and they care a lot about their appearance. 8s, on the other hand, are not that way. 8s actually can be clumsy people. They can be sort of haphazard people aesthetically, because they don't really have the awareness of aesthetics or of how they look, or have as much concern, which is more of a heart level thing, for the way people will perceive them. 2, 3, and 4 as heart types tend to be much more concerned with approval and value seeking, and 3s do that through achievement, but they also do it through aesthetics and physical expression. Most 3s I know are following some sort of trend. My dad is a 3, and when he was a young man, my mom said that he would go into a department store and look at the mannequin and kind of like go off of that. As a much older, more mature man now, he doesn't do that anymore. He has his own sense of style, but most 3s are following some sort of cultural ideal to affirm to themselves that they have value. 8s, on the other hand, are really not aware of this. They even sometimes can come across as either very understated and sort of take it as it is, or they can even come across as sort of like eccentrically mismatched, or like they're just not aware of what they're exuding. So though those seem like opposites, those both can be expressions of 8, but it's this just lack of aesthetic awareness. That does differ from wing to wing. So 7 wing and 9 wing for an 8, that can look a little bit different, because 9 has a little bit more aesthetic intuition. But if you're interested in that, check out my wings video on 8. Some of the other differences between 8 and 3 are the way that they pursue people and the way that they attempt to win, if you will, or dominate a situation if you're an 8. So winning and dominating seem like really kindred, and I think this is where people get it mixed up. But the difference is that 3s woo people. 3s are very charming. They go at it, again, from a heart-centered place and say, what can I do to get you to like me, or to know that I have value, to know that I'm worth it, to know that I'm good? What can I do for you to give me approval so that I can show up and be awesome and achieve and do all the things? 8, on the other hand, is really not going to woo people. They're going to show up and, again, shoot from the hip, and this can look very domineering, and it's why a lot of times 8s put people off, because they will show up to a small group, or they'll show up to a business meeting, or they'll show up to an extracurricular activity and kind of just say, this is the way we're doing it, this is what makes sense, and their matter-of-factness about that sometimes takes people off guard. This is a huge difference between 3 and 8. 3s are the masters of, I think, convincing people that they have worth and convincing themselves that they have worth. 8, on the other hand, there's no convincing, there's no method. In some ways, 3s are more calculated than 8s. 8s don't really plan in that way, they just move. That action piece of the instinctive center is really important when telling these types apart. It's also very important when perceiving these types and watching people. I don't comment on this a lot in my Enneagram videos, because truthfully, for those of you watching, I don't think it's a super healthy habit to be typing other people. So when I say this, that's not what I'm inviting you to do. But when it comes to our families, when it comes to our coworkers, when it comes to our friends and people that we really want to have better relationships with, sometimes it helps to perceive where a person's coming from. And so when I say that, that's what I'm saying, giving you permission to use the Enneagram 4 is more perceiving people than typing people. But these two types do feel very different in that sense. So the Enneagram 3, the achiever, their core sin is deceit. We've talked about that a little bit through manipulation and convincing others and themselves. Usually it actually starts with convincing themselves and then convincing others. So that is a huge difference in the way that 3s want to invite people to approve of them and to have value, and they feel a deep sense of inner hurt. this doesn't manifest itself externally usually, but inner hurt when they're rejected. That is why 3 also disintegrates to 9, because when 3s have been, feel like they have had a failure of a large nature, they will sort of retreat and go apathetic for a little while and play it safe so that they can't experience that. 8, on the other hand, really doesn't invite people to anything. That's a skill that they have to learn in health when they integrate towards 2, but 8s are offensive people by nature. This is something that I think is really glossed over to make people, I don't know, like, guys, the Enneagram is about sin. It's about sin patterns. It's about our dark side. It's about the ugly stuff. And sometimes when I see people gloss over that and say, like, make it a little more like Strength Finders or like MBTI in that, and want to just focus on the good, that really robs Enneagram of its ability to help us grow. So when we look at 8, I don't want you guys to think I'm being hard on 8. I mean, 3 has tons of issues too. As we said, deceit, that's like a huge deal. But when we look at 8, we can't sugarcoat it so more people can relate to it, which I think actually has kind of been done in our culture, because people have this false view of 8 as like sexy, and so they want to be an 8, and they want to kick butts and take names. But like, though that might be part of 8, that is not 8 at its core. 8 is a sadistic type. They have a temptation. So even if we look at it this way, 3 has a temptation to deceive themselves and deceive others. 8 has a temptation to be sadistic when it comes to their pursuit of power and their lust for power and their lust for autonomy. They have a temptation to pursue sadism. And most 8s I know have experienced that, even if through the small ways of joking about it. We all know joking about things just leads to potentially considering them. So, you know, I mean, I know even very healthy 8s who would admit to that. And that we do see 8 as a very bombastic, sadistic leaning type of person that would, at their worst, utilize their strength in order to bulldoze people if they have to. So that is a big difference, is that 8s will throw their weight around, 3s will charm and woo. So that's very different. This is a big misidentification. For those of you watching, I hope I didn't rabbit trails too much, but let me know if you have further questions on this misidentification. This happens, I used to say this happened more frequently for men, this one, but I have seen so much in the last year or so specifically, this happening a lot for women too. I think especially in corporate America, 3 women are pressured to put on the 8 mask and say, no, I'm just here to do business. You know, this very cut and dry attitude that we've come to value a lot in the Western world in women, which is like seeing women who are stoic and down to business and not going to be messed with as a really sexy, valuable thing. And a lot of 3s, I think, again, sacrifice their heart's desires in order to live up to the culture's expectations. That's just hardwired in a 3. And I think that it is really freeing when a 3 can come away from that and truly identify as what they are and see their value in what they have. So if you potentially are in this boat, please take time to consider. This is a really common misidentification. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. I will follow up this video with, dun dun dun, the actual results of the Lady 8 survey. This is why I did this video, though, is leading into that. I'm going to be doing a lot more 8 versus blank videos because, tiny spoiler, a lot of people who took the survey I think are misidentified. I don't say that to be like presumptuous, but it's just looking at the answers and looking at the data. I think we see a lot of that. So I'm going to be doing a few more of these 8 misidentification videos. Please tune in for that and for the survey results. Thanks so much, guys.